My name is Albert, and I was the third-born son in a family of 5 children. We were raised in New Rochelle, a modest city tucked within Westchester County, New York. To outsiders, New Rochelle was a place of tree-lined streets, aging brick apartments, and the occasional glimpse of wealth that trickled down from nearby Manhattan. But for us, life wasn't postcard perfect, it was survival. Our home was a cramped two-bedroom apartment in a rundown building with thin walls and flickering hallway lights. The kind of place where you could hear every neighbor's argument, television show, and heartbreak through the walls. My mother, a petite but strong-willed woman named Diane, worked double shifts at a nursing home. She barely slept. Her life revolved around keeping the lights on, food on the table, and her 5 children, my older brothers James and Marcus, my younger sister Elaine, and my youngest brother Kevin, alive and moving forward. There were no silver spoons or rainy day savings. Every dollar was counted, stretched, and often came up short. I remember nights where dinner was just bread, butter, and a shared can of beans. But my mom made it feel like a feast. She never let us see her break down, at least, not completely. Even when I'd wake up in the middle of the night and catch her sitting on the couch in the dark, silently crying into her palms, she'd quickly wipe her face and smile at me. "Go back to sleep, baby. Mama's just tired, that's all." I didn't know it then, but those moments shaped me. While my older brothers found escape in the streets, sometimes skipping school or getting into fights, I found purpose in structure. I did my homework. I cleaned up after my siblings. I walked Elaine and Kevin to school whenever I could. By the time I was 10, I had silently decided that I would be different. That I would do everything in my power to help my mom, to change the direction our lives were headed. We never talked much about our father. He was gone before Kevin was born. My memories of him were blurry, scattered, like trying to piece together a dream after waking up. My mom never badmouthed him, but the silence around his absence spoke louder than words. I used to fantasize that he'd come back one day, knock on our door with a big smile and open arms, apologizing for being gone. That he'd take us all somewhere warm and safe and finally give my mother a break. But the older I got, the more I realized that fairy tales don't visit broken apartments in Westchester County. So instead of looking for him, I started looking up to someone else, my mom. She wasn't perfect. She lost her temper sometimes, especially when the bills piled up and her body gave out from exhaustion. But she loved us ferociously. She went without so we could eat. She wore the same old shoes so we could wear new ones. And even when the world treated her like a statistic, a single black mother with 5 kids, she carried herself like a queen. Her strength became my compass. I think I started maturing faster than most kids. I didn't have a choice. I learned how to cook simple meals, how to sew a ripped shirt, and how to translate letters and bills for my mom because her reading skills weren't great. I got used to staying quiet, thinking ahead, and observing people. I figured out early on which teachers actually cared and which ones gave up on kids like me before they even learned our names. I used that knowledge to navigate school like a maze, always moving forward, always trying to get to the other side. Looking back now, I realize I wasn't just growing up, I was being prepared. Life was molding me into something solid, something dependable. My sense of duty came from watching my mother sacrifice everything without ever asking for recognition. And maybe that's why I took on so much, even as a teenager. Because deep down, I believed I owed her more than just love. I owed her a better future. School became my escape. While my brothers struggled to stay motivated, and chaos often buzzed in the background of our tiny apartment, I found clarity in the quiet of books and the structure of routines. I wasn't the smartest in the class, but I was relentless. I stayed after school, asked questions, borrowed extra textbooks from the library, and studied under the flickering kitchen light when everyone else was asleep. My teachers began to notice. One in particular, Mr. Thompson, my high school history teacher, pulled me aside one day and said, "Albert, you've got something special. Don't let the world wear it down." That moment stayed with me. It was one of the first times someone outside my family believed in me. In my final year of high school, all that hard work finally paid off. I remember sitting in the guidance counselor's office when she handed me the letter. A full academic sponsorship to a university in Michigan. My hands shook as I read it. I couldn't believe it. Someone was willing to invest in my future. Me, a kid from a forgotten part of New Rochelle. When I got home and told my mom, she didn't cry, she just hugged me tight, holding on as if she knew that things would never be the same again. Go do what I never could, she whispered. Moving to Michigan felt like stepping into another world. The campus was huge, full of opportunity and distraction. But I didn't come to play, I came with a mission. While other students went out partying on weekends, I signed up for evening shifts at the library and cleaned classrooms for extra cash. I discovered online freelancing, writing blog posts, doing digital tasks, and eventually learning search engine optimization. That's how I began making my first real money. At first, it felt strange seeing money in my account, money I had earned without scrubbing floors or flipping burgers. But every time I saw a deposit, my mind went straight home. I'd remember the evenings my mom came home with aching feet and a tired smile, or the days she skipped meals so we could eat. That money wasn't just mine, it was hope for my family. So I started sending money home. Small amounts at first, just enough to help with groceries or cover a utility bill. Then, when I realized my younger sister was falling behind in school, I paid her tuition. Soon after, I was covering other siblings' expenses too. Each dollar I sent home chipped away at my own savings. But it never felt like a sacrifice. It felt like my duty. Like I was doing exactly what I was meant to do. Looking back, I think that's when I first lost sight of myself. Not out of weakness, but out of love. I wasn't just chasing a better life for me. I was trying to carry everyone else along with me. By my second year at university, something had shifted. I wasn't just a student anymore. I had become the financial backbone of my family. My part-time jobs and freelance gigs had evolved. I wasn't making a fortune, but I was earning more than anyone else in the house ever had. For the first time, we weren't relying solely on my mother's paycheck. My income started covering more than just the occasional grocery run. It started filling in the cracks my mother could no longer patch. My younger sister, Elaine, had always struggled academically. While I found escape in books, she found frustration. Her grades were inconsistent, and she had little motivation left by the time she reached high school. When I heard she might not finish her final year because of unpaid fees, I didn't even hesitate. I transferred money that same night, even though it meant I'd have to skip meals that week and walk to class instead of taking the bus. That was the beginning of a pattern. Tuition, books, exam fees. I became the go-to solution for every financial emergency back home. If the water got cut off, they called me. If someone needed new shoes for school, they called me. It didn't matter that I was juggling classes, assignments, and tight deadlines for freelance clients. I was the dependable one. The one who always found a way. But what no one saw was the toll it was taking on me. There were nights I lay awake staring at the ceiling, calculating how much I had left after sending money home. Most of the time, the number was depressingly small. I lived off instant noodles, wore the same 2 pairs of jeans all semester, and passed up on internship opportunities because they were unpaid. While my classmates planned spring break trips or bought the latest phones, I scrolled through discount sites hoping to stretch every dollar I had. Still, I never complained. Because every time I thought about quitting or saving for myself, I saw my mother's tired face and remembered the sacrifices she made. I thought of Elaine's future, of Kevin and Marcus trying to find their way. I told myself I was investing, not in stocks or real estate, but in people. In my family. But somewhere along the line, my own dreams began to dim. I had once thought of getting my master's degree, maybe even starting my own business. But those plans slowly slid to the background. I had responsibilities now, real ones, and every decision I made came with a price, not just in dollars, but in delay, in compromise, in sacrifice. I kept going, because when you've been the strong one for so long, it doesn't feel like a choice. It feels like a duty. I thought that if I just held on long enough, it would all be worth it, that one day, they would all stand with me. I was wrong. Growing up without a father meant that I quietly clung to any older male who showed even a flicker of guidance or strength. And for most of my childhood, that figure was my mother's younger brother, Uncle Raymond. He wasn't around often. Maybe 2 or 3 times a year, he'd show up at our door in New Rochelle with a wide smile, a thick gold watch, and stories that made our little world seem less gray. He drove a clean car, always a different one, and carried himself like a man who knew how to win at life. To me, as a kid who grew up around worn shoes and overdue bills, Uncle Raymond looked like success. My mother never spoke poorly of him. In fact, she seemed to soften in his presence, laughing in ways I rarely saw. I assumed that meant he was one of the good ones. So when he called me out of the blue during my final year of university and invited me to visit him in Alabama, I was curious and flattered. "You're doing well, Al," he said. "It's time we talk about building something bigger." I scraped together the money and made the trip. His home was modest but modern, neat yard, clean driveway. A place that made it look like life had been kind to him. He welcomed me like a son, even introduced me to a few of his business partners, men who threw around words like equity, passive income, and legacy. Over dinner, Uncle Raymond pitched the idea. He and his partners had started a private investment group. They pooled money monthly, used it to fund new ventures, real estate, online businesses, even some import-export work. "It's the kind of opportunity black families don't get unless we build it ourselves," he said, leaning in with a serious look. "You're smart, Albert. You work hard. Why not let your money work for you too?" Part of me was intrigued. I'd always wanted to build something lasting. But another part of me hesitated. I had very little saved. Most of what I earned still went to support my siblings and cover my own basic needs. And I didn't know these men. I didn't understand the structure. It felt vague, risky, but in our culture, questioning your elders feels like disrespect. And Uncle Raymond wasn't just an uncle, he was one of the few male figures I had ever trusted. So I nodded, even though a voice deep inside whispered caution. "I'll start small," I said. "Just a few hundred a month." He smiled, clapped me on the back, and called me a wise young man. I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe that after everything I'd done for others, this was finally a step toward doing something for myself. I didn't know it then, but that decision would be the beginning of my greatest loss yet. After committing to my uncle's investment plan, I adjusted my life around it. Every month, I sent a fixed portion of my earnings to him, without fail. He'd occasionally update me with vague progress reports: "The returns are coming soon, we're expanding into new territory, just stay patient." I wanted to believe him. I needed something to believe in. So I kept contributing, for 5 years. In that time, life around me began to shift. Elaine, my younger sister, the one I had helped through school, eventually dropped out. Despite my efforts and encouragement, her motivation slipped through the cracks. Before I knew it, she was engaged to a guy the first had never even met. Just like that, school was over for her. A wedding replaced a graduation ceremony. One by one, the others started carving out their own paths. Marcus moved down to Georgia after landing a warehouse job. James got a job with a delivery company and moved in with his girlfriend in New Jersey. Kevin, the youngest, finished community college and took an entry-level IT role somewhere in Pennsylvania. None of them called much. No one really checked in. When they did, it was usually a request for money or advice. Meanwhile, I remained rooted in my routine, working full-time as an SEO consultant, freelancing on the side, and sending monthly payments to Uncle Raymond. I was earning well, sure, but it never felt like enough. Most of it still went toward helping my family or feeding the so-called investment. I told myself it was a season of sacrifice, that my time to breathe would come. Through it all, there was one person who never drifted: my mother. By the time I was in my late 20s, the once crowded apartment in New Rochelle had grown quiet. The siblings had all moved out. The laughter and noise that used to fill the tiny kitchen were gone. And my mom, once so full of strength, was starting to show signs of wear. Her steps were slower, her voice a little softer, her silences longer. We talked often. Some nights I'd call just to hear her voice. "How are you holding up, Ma?" I'd ask. "I'm all right, baby. Just miss all of you. The house is too quiet now." I could hear the loneliness in her words. All those years she poured her soul into raising us, and now she was left alone in a space that felt more like a memory than a home. So, I stepped in again. I started paying for her medication, sent groceries through online stores, even tried to convince her to move closer to me in Michigan. But she refused. "This is my home, Albert. I just want to know you're okay." She was still worrying about me, even after everything. At the time, I believed I was investing wisely, in my uncle's business. In my family, in a future where we would all rise together. I didn't know that I was the only one still holding on. I had always thought that as long as I kept working hard, I'd be okay. I wasn't aiming for luxury, just stability, security, a chance to finally breathe after years of grinding. But life doesn't always reward persistence the way we hope. The company I worked for, a promising mid-sized digital marketing firm, had been going through quiet turbulence. There were whispers of restructuring, some layoffs, and budget cuts. Still, I convinced myself I was safe. I had good performance reviews, handled major accounts, and never missed a deadline. Then came the email. It arrived on a Wednesday morning. The subject line was cold and direct: company closure notice. My hands trembled as I read it. How, due to financial insolvency, the company was shutting down effective immediately. No severance, no transition plan, just a thank you and a wish for future success. I stared at my screen for a long time. Numb. 5 years of work, gone in seconds. For the first few days, I tried to stay calm. I told myself I had a backup, my investment with Uncle Raymond. After all, that money was meant to be my safety net. I had been contributing for 5 years. Surely, I thought, that would carry me through while I searched for a new job. I called him that evening. He didn't pick up. The next day, I tried again. No answer. I sent a message: "Uncle, I lost my job. I need access to my investment." He replied a day later. "Sorry to hear, Al. We're facing legal issues with the company. Accounts frozen by the government. Can't access anything right now." The words felt scripted, like he had rehearsed them. My heart sank. I kept pressing, calling, texting, for weeks. Eventually, the replies stopped altogether. He ghosted me. That's when I started digging. A few late-night searches led me to online forums where others had mentioned being brought in by Raymond or his so-called partners. Most of them had never seen a dime in return. The business wasn't registered anywhere legitimate. The more I searched, the more pieces came together, and the picture they formed broke me. It had all been a lie. The promises, the updates, the dream. My uncle had conned me, slowly, quietly, over 5 years, and I'd let him. Suddenly, I was 29, jobless, and with no savings. Everything I'd earned had gone to my family or to that scam. I had nothing to fall back on. I reached out to my siblings. After all, I'd carried them for years. Maybe they'd return the favor. But the responses were cold. "Things are tight right now. We're dealing with our own issues. Wish we could help, bro." Even my mother, who wanted to help so badly, had nothing to give but tears and prayers. I had hit rock bottom, stripped of everything I'd worked for, left alone in a storm I never saw coming. Losing my job was one thing. Realizing I had been betrayed by the one man I had trusted like a father was another. But nothing prepared me for the silence that followed when I turned to my siblings, the very people I had bled myself dry for. I wasn't asking for much. A few $100s, a temporary place to crash, even just someone to talk to. But the responses I got were mechanical, almost rehearsed. "Man, things are really tight right now. I just had a baby. I'd love to help, bro, but we're behind on rent ourselves. Maybe try reaching out to Uncle Raymond?" That last one stung like a knife. I wanted to scream. Did they not remember all the tuition I paid? The late-night calls I answered? The jobs I juggled while they built their lives without ever looking back? I had picked up every broken piece of our family over the years, and now that I was the one in pieces, no one even reached for the glue. Eventually, I ran out of options. I sold what little I had left, my laptop, some clothes, even my headphones, just to stretch another week. Then the money dried up. The rent lapsed. And just like that, I was on the street. New York City is loud and alive when you have purpose. But when you're homeless, it becomes a cold, indifferent machine. I learned quickly where to sit and not get moved, where the shelters were, and how to make a single cup of coffee last an entire day. The nights were the worst. You can't sleep deeply on a bench. You nap with one eye open, hugging your backpack like it's the last bit of safety you have. I tried not to break, but I felt myself unraveling. I kept thinking back to everything I'd done, all the sacrifices, all the years I'd poured into others. And not a single hand had reached back. It wasn't just loneliness, it was betrayal in its purest form. I wasn't just abandoned, I was forgotten. I remember one rainy afternoon, curled up under a train overpass in Queens, shivering in wet clothes, when I genuinely asked myself if it was worth holding on. What was left for me? That's when something shifted. A volunteer from a local nonprofit, someone just doing rounds, noticed me. She offered a warm meal, then asked questions I hadn't been asked in months. What's your story? What happened? She listened, really listened. Over the next few weeks, they helped me apply for emergency housing, connected me with counseling, and found me part-time work cleaning community centers. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a start, a seed of hope. For the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't invisible. I wasn't alone. I wasn't someone's forgotten savior. I was a person again. The first job they gave me wasn't much, part-time janitorial work at a community hall in Brooklyn. I remember my first shift clearly. I had never held a mop for hours at a time, but I did it with quiet gratitude. There was dignity in it. After months of sleeping on benches and rationing scraps of food, just having a locker to keep my clothes in felt like luxury. The organization didn't just give me a job, they gave me structure. A place to show up to. A schedule. Faces that greeted me with something other than suspicion. Slowly, day by day, I began to reclaim parts of myself I thought I had lost forever. By the second month, I was offered a contract role managing social media and online visibility for the nonprofit's outreach programs. One of the caseworkers had mentioned my background in SEO and digital marketing. When they realized I had experience, they took a chance on me. That chance changed everything. It wasn't a six-figure job, and it wasn't glamorous, but it felt right. I was using my skills again, writing, optimizing web pages, tracking analytics, and for the first time in a long time, I felt useful. Needed. But I was different now. The old Albert would have poured himself into the role until he had nothing left for himself. The version of me who had spent years sacrificing for others was gone. Not bitter, but change. I started saving, not just money, but energy, time, emotional bandwidth. I stopped replying to every call from my siblings. When I did pick up, I listened more than I spoke. I no longer offered solutions to every crisis they created. I had to unlearn the habit of rescuing everyone else while I drowned. I set boundaries with my mother too. I still helped where I could, sent her a monthly allowance and made sure her medical bills were covered. But I no longer made myself feel guilty for not doing more. I had done enough. I began going to therapy, something I never thought I'd afford, let alone need. It helped me understand the difference between responsibility and guilt. I had carried the weight of an entire family for years, confusing love with self-erasure. Now, I was learning to stand for myself without apology. Rebuilding wasn't fast or easy. There were days I still flinched when my phone rang, expecting another request. Nights I lay awake, morning time lost to people who didn't value it. But I was growing, healing, rising from the ashes of who I had been. The world hadn't changed, but I had. And that made all the difference. It started with a text from my younger brother. Just a casual "Hey bro, how you been?" followed by a thumbs up emoji. On the surface, it looked like a normal message, something two brothers might send to reconnect. But after months, maybe years, of silence, after I'd begged for help and been met with nothing but excuses, I didn't reply right away. 2 days later, my eldest sister called. I stared at her name flashing across the screen, my chest tightening. The last time we spoke, she told me she was too overwhelmed to deal with anyone else's problems. Now she was calling as if we were close. I let it go to voicemail. But they kept coming, calls, messages, voice notes. At first, subtle check-ins. Then, not so subtle requests. Could you help me with rent this month? My kid needs school supplies. I heard you're back on your feet, so happy for you. Can you spot me alone? Each message felt like a reopening of wounds I'd worked so hard to heal. Where were they when I had slept under bridges, when I had walked miles for a free meal, when I had nothing but shame in my pockets? I wasn't angry, not in the loud, burning way I used to be. But there was a deep ache, a quiet betrayal that still hadn't found closure. I brought it up in therapy. My counselor asked me a simple question: are you trying to heal or trying to be the hero again? That question stuck with me. Because the truth was, I had always played the role of the fixer. The provider. The reliable one. It was how I found meaning, how I earned love, or so I believed. But now, I had learned what that kind of love cost me. I sat with those messages for days. I drafted replies and deleted them. I wanted to forgive them, not just for their sake, but for mine. Carrying resentment is heavy, but forgiving didn't mean sacrificing myself again. Eventually, I responded. I wrote, "I'm glad to hear from you. I hope you're doing okay. Right now, I'm focused on rebuilding and taking care of my own life. I'm not in a position to help financially, but I truly wish you the best." I sent the same message, in different words, to each sibling who reached out. Some never replied, others sent guilt-laced texts. One even accused me of changing, of acting brand new. Maybe I had change. I had to. Because the version of me who gave everything and asked for nothing had already died once, on a cold bench in Queens. The man standing in his place wasn't heartless. He was healing. And healing meant choosing peace, even if it meant walking away from people you once called family. For the first time in my life, I'm building something just for me. No siblings to rescue, no elders to impress, no guilt dragging behind every paycheck I earn. Just me, Albert, the man who survived loss, betrayal, abandonment, and still found a way to stand tall again. My priorities have shifted. I used to count success by how many people I could carry on my back. Now, I measure it by how grounded I feel when I wake up in the morning. My peace is non-negotiable. My time, my energy, my money, they're no longer up for grabs. I'm saving now, not for someone else's tuition or rent, but for my own home. A place that's mine, where I can hang my coat without fearing eviction, where silence doesn't echo with shame. It may take time, but every dollar I tuck away is a brick in that foundation. Each one says, I matter, too. And maybe, just maybe, I'll find love. Not the kind that demands endless giving without return, but the kind that nurtures. I want a partner who sees the man behind the scars. Someone who respects the quiet strength I carry and doesn't expect me to sacrifice my soul to prove my worth. For once, I want to build something that includes me, not just surrounds me. I still check in on my mother. I always will. She fought harder than anyone else for us, and despite her own flaws, I know she did what she could. But even with her, I've drawn boundaries. I no longer answer every late-night call. I don't say yes out of guilt. I say yes when I can, and that's enough. Family, that word used to mean everything to me. It was sacred, untouchable, but now I see it differently. Blood may make you relatives, but loyalty? Loyalty makes you family. And love, real love, doesn't come with strings attached. I've learned that people will take until you're empty, then walk away when you have nothing left. So I stopped handing out pieces of myself to those who wouldn't even notice if I disappeared again. Some days, I still feel echoes of the past. When the train rumbles by or the wind bites my skin a certain way, I remember those street nights. But they don't define me anymore. They remind me how far I've come. I'm not trying to be a hero anymore. I'm just trying to be whole. Choosing myself doesn't mean I've stopped caring. It means I've started healing. And healing requires space, grace, and the courage to say, I deserve more. So here I am, still standing. Not because someone saved me, but because I finally chose to save myself. And from this point on, I walk forward, not carrying everyone else's burdens, but holding my own dreams close, like the light they've always been. The future may still be uncertain, but for once, it's mine. Please subscribe for more videos. Share your story in the comment section. We will like to hear and learn from it.